my grandson asked me. Why don't you ever come to family dinners? I didn't even get to answer before my daughter-in-law said, why would we invite some old man who's never given us anything? I stayed silent. The next day, she called me 17 times. I'm a 72-year-old retired plumber living alone in a small house outside of Cincinnati. My name is Paul. I have one son, Eric, 44 years old, married to a woman named Tara. They've got 2 kids, my grandsons, Josh, 10, and Liam, 7. I used to be the kind of grandpa who brought candy on birthdays, who fixed leaky faucets without asking, who showed up to every Little League game. But over the last 5 years, things changed. Eric started pulling away. First, it was too busy to talk. Then it became, maybe next time, Dad. And eventually, I stopped getting invited altogether. At first, I thought it was my fault. Maybe I'd overstepped, or maybe I was being too clingy. But then I realized the shift began after my wife passed away and the house, our family home, was put in my name alone. It was always understood that one day the house would go to Eric. But after Maggie died, I didn't make any promises. And suddenly, I was difficult. Tara never liked me. I don't say that out of bitterness. It's just a fact. She always saw me as a working-class embarrassment. I still remember her wedding toast, how she joked that Eric was finally done fixing broken pipes. Everybody laughed. I didn't. Anyway, I hadn't been to a family dinner in nearly 3 years. No calls on Thanksgiving. A brief, happy holidays, text on Christmas. And I didn't want to make a scene. I just stayed quiet. Until last week, when everything boiled over. Josh, sweet, curious Josh, asked the simplest question. And what Tara said in response? Well, that's why I'm here. That's why I'm finally writing this. What she didn't know is that staying silent doesn't mean staying powerless. It happened on a Sunday. My neighbor's kid was selling Girl Scout cookies, so I walked over to their place to grab a few boxes. On my way back, I passed by the park near their neighborhood, and wouldn't you know it, there they were. Eric, Tara, the boys, even Tara's parents. I hesitated for a second, thinking maybe I should wave. But before I could even raise my hand, Josh spotted me and lit up. Grandpa Paul, he shouted, running toward me. The kid hugged me like we hadn't seen each other in years. Which, honestly, was pretty accurate. That's when he looked up at me and asked it. Why don't you ever come to family dinners? Before I could even get a word out, Tara, who had walked up behind him, barked loud enough for everyone to hear. Why would we invite some old man who's never given us anything? I stood there frozen, not because her words shocked me, they didn't, but because of how casual they were. Like she'd been waiting to say it. Like that line had been rehearsed. Eric didn't say anything, just stared at the ground like a scolded child. Josh blinked, confused. But, you gave us that big swing set, he said. Tara pulled him away without answering. I didn't follow. I turned around and walked home. Didn't say a word. But that night, I pulled out the old lockbox Maggie and I used to keep in the closet. Inside were property papers, insurance forms, a copy of my will, things I hadn't looked at in a long time. That's when I noticed something strange. My most recent insurance renewal listed a secondary contact, Eric. That was odd. I'd never added him. Then I found a copy of a durable power of attorney form and signed by me, but with my name typed in. And Tara's handwriting on the sticky note attached. Have him sign at brunch. Brunch I was never invited to. That's when I knew. This wasn't just hurt feelings anymore. Something was going on behind my back, and I was going to get to the bottom of it. I didn't call. I didn't text. I waited. The next morning, Tara called me. Once. Then again. By noon, she called 17 times. I let every call go to voicemail. When I finally picked up, her voice was all sugar. Hi, Paul. Just wanted to check in after yesterday. Josh was really upset. He didn't understand why you walked away like that. No apology. No mention of what she said. Just a subtle jab, as if I had caused the scene. I didn't bite. Why is Eric listed as my insurance contact? I asked flatly. Silence. Then, oh, I think the agent must have just assumed. No, he didn't. I looked through the paperwork. There was a note. In your handwriting. Another pause. Well, maybe we were just trying to help, Paul. I mean, you're getting older. We were thinking long term. It's not like you've set anything up legally. I have set things up legally, I said. And I never gave either of you permission to act on my behalf. Her tone changed fast. You're overreacting. This is exactly why Eric gets so stressed. You twist everything and make it about control. I took a breath. My hand was shaking, not from fear, from fury. Tara, don't call again. You're not part of any decisions involving my life, my finances, or my estate. And tell Eric the same. She scoffed, muttered something about old men with nothing to leave anyway, and hung up. She thought I was bluffing. She was wrong. I won't pretend it didn't hurt. After I hung up, I just sat in the kitchen. Same seat I've sat in for 35 years. Same spot where Maggie used to bring me coffee while I read the paper. That chair felt heavier than usual. You know what got me the most? Not the insult. Not even the manipulation. It was Eric's silence. He just stood there in that park. Let his wife humiliate me in front of my grandsons. Didn't defend me. Didn't even look at me. I raised that boy. I coached his baseball team when my hands were still calloused from a week of frozen pipes. I patched up his first apartment when he and Tara moved in. I gave them that swing set. I paid off their car when they were drowning in student loans. And all of it, forgotten, rewritten. Suddenly, I'm the old man who never gave them anything. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Josh's face, confused, hurt, wondering why Grandpa walked away. That kid still thinks the world is fair. He doesn't realize yet how some people rewrite the past when it no longer benefits them to remember it. By sunrise, I knew what I had to do. No more hoping things would fix themselves. No more silence. They wanted to erase me quietly. I decided I'd make a little noise. The first thing I did Monday morning was call my lawyer, Margaret Summers. She's been handling my affairs since Maggie passed. Sharp as a tack, no nonsense, and not afraid to call something what it is. Theft, manipulation, fraud. I brought in the documents, the insurance letter, the forged POA draft, and the handwritten note. She reviewed them in silence, flipping slowly, her mouth tightening with every page. Finally, she looked up and said, "They're setting up a quiet takeover." She explained it like this. Tara and Eric were likely positioning themselves to claim I was mentally unfit. The POA would give them control over my financial decisions. From there, they could transfer property, access funds, and box me out, all while pretending it was for my protection. And once I was gone, everything would legally fall into their laps. The house, the savings, the land I still leased to the neighbor's orchard. I asked if it was criminal. Borderline, she said. But it doesn't need to get there. Not if we move first. That same day, we filed updated documents. A revoked authorization removing Eric from anything financial or legal. A formal no-contact notice regarding my personal affairs. And the big one, a new will, leaving everything to a trust in Josh and Liam's names, accessible only when they turn 25, with a trustee outside the family. That swing set. It was symbolic. I always wanted those boys to have something solid. Now they would. Tara and Eric thought I was some lonely old man with no teeth left. But I still had bite. And I wasn't done yet. 3 days after I signed the new documents, the fallout began. It started with a knock. I opened the door to find Eric on my porch, hands in his pockets, doing that fake smile thing he does when he wants something. "Hey, Dad, mind if we talk?" I didn't step aside. "Talk here." He sighed. "Look, Tara's really upset. She thinks there's been a misunderstanding." "There's no misunderstanding," I interrupted. "You stood there while your wife publicly humiliated me. Then I found a forged POA and your name listed on my insurance without consent. That's not confusion. That's intent." Eric blinked. "I didn't forge anything. Did you know about it?" Silence. "That's what I thought," I said. He glanced around like he didn't want the neighbors to hear. "Why are you doing this, Dad? Why are you trying to punish us?" "Punish you? No. I'm protecting myself. From you. From her. From whatever game you two think you're playing." Eric's face flushed red. "You think cutting us off helps anyone? You think writing us out of everything is fair? After everything we've done for you?" "For me?" I laughed. "You mean the holidays I spend alone? The grandkids I haven't seen in years? The dinners I was never invited to? Don't rewrite history, son. You made your choices." He stepped back like I'd slapped him. "You'll regret this," he muttered, before walking off. "Maybe I will. But not today." I thought cutting them off legally would be the end of it. It wasn't. 2 days after Eric's porch visit, I got a call from Mrs. Patterson, a longtime neighbor and friend of Maggie's. She sounded cautious. "Paul, I don't mean to pry, but is everything all right? I heard from Tara's mother that you've been declining mentally, that maybe you weren't safe living alone." My stomach dropped. It wasn't just about stealing from me anymore. Now they were building a narrative. I asked where she heard that. She got quiet. Pamela mentioned it at the church luncheon, said it was a family matter, but that they were trying to intervene gently. Something about early dementia? That's when it clicked. The fake POA, the insurance contact, the brunch ambush, it was all part of a bigger plan. They weren't just trying to access my estate. They were trying to make it look like I wasn't fit to handle it myself. To everyone. Friends, neighbors, maybe even doctors. I hung up politely, then sat down at my kitchen table and stared at the Warrenwood for a long time. They were trying to erase me while I was still alive. But I wasn't going to go quietly. I called Margaret and told her everything. Her response was immediate. We file a cease and desist, and we document every word. We were going to shut this down, publicly, legally, and permanently. Margaret didn't waste time. The next morning, she had her assistant draft and send a formal cease and desist letter to both Eric and Tara, as well as to Tara's parents, Pamela and Ronald. It spelled things out clearly. Any further attempt to spread false or defamatory claims regarding Paul Carr's mental health, capacity, or character will result in legal action. Your statements have been documented. You are advised to refrain from contacting Mr. Carr or speaking on his behalf in any context. But Margaret didn't stop there. She suggested we go on the offensive. We scheduled an appointment with my primary care physician, Dr. Abrams, for a full cognitive assessment. I passed every test, no concerns, no signs of dementia. I even asked for a notarized letter stating exactly that. Margaret framed the letter, along with a signed affidavit from me stating that I was of sound mind and had updated my will voluntarily and without pressure. We weren't just reacting anymore. We were building a legal wall around me, brick by brick. Then came the kicker. Margaret recommended a public notice, posted in the community bulletin and HOA newsletter, stating that I had updated my legal documents and that no one was authorized to speak or act on my behalf. It wasn't just about the law now. It was about cutting off their lies before they reached any more ears. If they wanted a quiet takeover, they picked the wrong man. After the public notice went out, things got quiet. Too quiet. No calls. No voicemails. Not even a text from Eric. But then, about a week later, I got a knock at the door. Not Tara. Not Eric. Josh. 10 years old. Backpack slung over one shoulder, nervous smile. Behind him stood Eric's SUV, engine running. Tara was in the driver's seat, sunglasses on, pretending to look at her phone. "Hi, Grandpa," Josh said. "Can I come in?" I looked past him. Tara didn't move, didn't wave. I nodded and let him in. He sat at the table, same spot where Maggie used to serve cookies, and pulled out a drawing. It was of our old swing set. "I miss this," he said. "We don't go to the park anymore." I asked gently, "Did your mom tell you to come here?" He shrugged. "She said you were lonely, and that you were probably sad 'cause you're sick." I felt something twist in my chest. Not anger. Not yet. Sadness. They were using him, manipulating a child to do damage control. Or worse, to gather evidence for their case. Maybe even record something. I didn't know. I smiled and handed him a juice box from the fridge. Sat with him for 10 minutes. We talked about his school project. Then I walked him back to the car. Tara rolled down the window. "See? No harm in reconnecting, right?" I leaned in and spoke low. "You use that boy again, Tara, and I'll have a restraining order so fast your heels won't touch the ground." Her smile faltered. For the first time, she looked scared. And that's when I knew. The mask had slipped. 2 days after Josh's visit, I found something wedged under my screen door. A plain white envelope. No return address. Inside was a letter, handwritten in blue ink, and a photocopy of my old will. The one that left everything to Eric, dated 5 years ago, before Maggie passed. The letter read, "We're trying to be patient. This isn't how families should treat each other. Think about what's best for the boys. No one wants to see things get complicated." No signature. No threat spelled out. But every line dripped with implication. They weren't just pushing anymore. They were pressuring. Trying to make me question myself. Trying to rattle me. I brought it straight to Margaret. She raised an eyebrow. "They're escalating," she said. "And they're getting careless." We reviewed our options, and that's when she laid out the next step. "Do you want to file for a protective injunction?" she asked. "We have enough. The forged documents, the defamatory statements, the uninvited visits, and now this letter. If you're ready, we can take this to court." I stared at the photocopy of my old will. The one I never revoked properly until now. The one they were clearly banking on. They're trying to make me doubt what I already fixed, I said. No, let's take it to court. Let's make this public. I want a record they can't erase. Margaret nodded. Then we file first thing in the morning. And just like that, the next chapter began. Margaret filed the motion for a protective injunction the next morning. We included everything. The fake POA draft, the insurance change, Tara's statement in the park, the neighbor testimonies, the unsolicited letter, even the weaponization of Josh. All of it compiled into a thick, meticulously organized file. By Friday, Eric and Tara were officially served. I imagined their reaction. Tara pacing, shouting. Eric pretending to be blindsided. I almost felt sorry for the mailman. Almost. 3 days later, I got a letter from their attorney. Yes, they'd lawyered up. It was full of the usual gaslighting nonsense. Our clients are deeply concerned for Mr. Carr's well-being. They categorically deny any intention to manipulate or coerce, and they wish only to support him in his later years. The legal actions taken are unfortunate and, in their view, misguided. Then came the kicker. Given Mr. Carr's fragile emotional state, we advise mediation rather than escalation. Our clients request a joint meeting to resolve misunderstandings peacefully. I read it twice, then laughed. They were scared. This wasn't concern, it was containment. They didn't want a courtroom. They didn't want a judge seeing their paper trail. Margaret's advice? Decline mediation. Proceed with hearing. So we did. Court date. Set. I spent the evening going through old photo albums. Not out of nostalgia, out of clarity. To remind myself who I was before all this. A father. A husband. A man who built a life with his hands, not lies. They thought I was weak. They thought I wouldn't fight. They were wrong. The hearing was set for 9 a.m. in a small civil courtroom downtown. I wore my best jacket, the one Maggie picked out for our anniversary dinner in '04, and brought every document Margaret told me to. She walked in right beside me, calm, sharp, prepared. Eric and Tara were already there. Tara had on this polished suburban wife look, all pearls and wide eyes, like she was the picture of concern. Eric didn't look at me once. The judge was a woman in her 50s. Direct. No patience for drama. Margaret laid everything out, clean, factual, relentless. She showed the judge the attempted POA, the insurance change, the defamation whispered through neighbors, the manipulation of Josh, and that handwritten letter with its veiled threats. Tara's attorney tried to pivot hard. Your Honor, this is a family miscommunication that's been blown out of proportion. My clients have only acted out of love and concern for Mr. Carr. Margaret cut in with the photo of the letter. And this? Was this written out of concern too? The judge asked Tara directly. Did you write this? Tara hesitated. Looked at Eric. I don't remember. The judge raised an eyebrow. You don't remember writing a veiled threat to the man you're claiming to protect? Silence. Then Eric stood up. This is crazy. He's rewriting everything. We just wanted to make sure he didn't waste the inheritance. My wife and I. Sit down, Mr. Carr, the judge said. This isn't about money. It's about control. And I don't see any signs that he is the one abusing it. That was the moment I saw Tara's face crack. Just a flicker. Her mouth tightened. Her shoulders stiffened. And for the first time, she looked cornered. The judge ruled in my favor. Protective injunction granted. All estate documents filed as valid and voluntary. Any further contact from Eric or Tara to go through legal channels only. And just like that, the courtroom fell quiet. When the hearing ended, I didn't look back. I walked out with Margaret, feeling something I hadn't felt in years, steady. Not just legally protected, but emotionally. Untangled. But the aftermath? That rolled in fast. The church group, the same one where Pamela had spread rumors, started asking questions. Apparently, word of the injunction got around. Mrs. Patterson told me the whispers turned into full-blown conversations. One neighbor, Mr. Henderson, actually dropped off a note. We always knew something felt off with them. Glad you stood up for yourself. It was small, but it meant something. Meanwhile, Eric sent one last email. Through his lawyer, of course. It was bitter, defensive, and filled with that hollow kind of apology that's really just blame with punctuation. We regret how things unfolded. We hope someday you'll see we were just trying to help. You've hurt your family over paranoia and pride. I didn't respond. Margaret filed it for record-keeping and flagged it as non-compliant contact. One more slip, and the judge would escalate restrictions. But the real turning point? A visit from Josh's school counselor. Apparently, Josh had mentioned Grandpa's court in a class discussion. The school reached out, and after a long talk with a very sympathetic staff member, I learned something heartbreaking. Josh had no idea why I stopped coming around. He missed me, and Tara had been telling him I was too tired to visit and needed rest. Nothing about the truth. The counselor gave me permission to send Josh a letter. No contact rules didn't apply to him, and I did. Carefully worded, age-appropriate, but honest. I told him, Grandpa loves you. Some adults made choices that made it hard for us to see each other. But I'm still here, and I'm okay. No manipulation, just the truth. It wasn't revenge. It was restoration. Weeks passed. No more surprise visits. No more letters shoved under my door. No more fake concern. Just silence. And in that silence, something unexpected happened. I started living again. I fixed the old porch swing Maggie used to love. I joined a community woodworking class. I even started helping out at the library on Wednesdays, something I'd always said I'd do once things settle. But the biggest shift wasn't in my routine. It was in my mindset. For years, I held on to this idea that family means loyalty, that even if we argued, or drifted apart, or disappointed each other, we still circled back. But now, I've come to understand, family isn't blood. Family is behavior. Eric made his choice. He let someone reshape his values. Let his wife take the lead in dismantling trust. And when he had the chance to step up, he chose silence. And silence, in the face of wrongdoing, is still betrayal. I won't chase people who see me as a wallet, a burden, or an obstacle. I've got grandkids who deserve to know the kind of man I really am. And one day, when they're old enough to see through the noise, I'll be here. No shame, no secrets, just truth. I didn't burn the bridge. I just stopped pretending it wasn't already in ashes. If you'd asked me a year ago whether I'd ever cut off my only son, I would have said never. If you'd asked me whether I'd end up in court defending myself against my own family, I'd have laughed. But life doesn't always fall apart in explosions. Sometimes it crumbles slowly, under the weight of unspoken resentment, greed dressed as concern, and quiet betrayals no one wants to name. I'm not angry anymore. Truly, I'm not. I'm disappointed. And free. People assume revenge has to be loud. Court battles, shouting matches, money ripped away in big dramatic scenes. But real revenge? It's clarity. It's living well when they expected you to fall apart. It's making sure the people who tried to erase you end up invisible in your story. Josh and Liam will grow up. They'll ask questions. And when they do, there'll be records, letters, and a very clear legal paper trail. Not out of spite, but so they know their grandfather didn't disappear. He stood up. To anyone reading this who feels that knot in your gut, the one that tells you something is off with the people closest to you, don't ignore it. Document everything. Don't wait for things to go back to normal. Sometimes, normal was the problem. And don't be afraid to defend your dignity, even if it means standing alone. Because trust me, it's better to be alone with self-respect than surrounded by people who smile while they sharpen the knives. Paul Carr, 72 years old, still here, still standing, and finally, at peace.